Alright guys, so now that we got the servos installed for flaps and ailerons and the control rod is finalized and adjusted to the length that we need, the next step is to cut out the retracts under this covering. So just put a brand new number 11 blade on my hobby knife here, and then I'm probably going to shine a flashlight underneath just to kind of see where the location is of where the cutout on the formers are, so I don't cut into it. So I'm going to go ahead and start cutting the covering off and then show you guys how it looks like on the inside, and then move on to the next step of this build. Alright guys, so now that we've got the covering cut out for the landing gear and the wheel well, all we're going to do is just take the wheel well covers and basically put it in place. So we're going to test fit it to see how it looks. If I need to do any kind of trimming to the wheel well cover, we'll do that, and then we'll just pretty much sand it and see how it's gonna fit. And right now, just kind of test fitting it. That's actually not bad. That's actually pretty good. There's not a lot of trimming that's going to be needed. In the past, with building Phoenix models, you just pretty much have the wheel well cover, and you have to cut out the shape of it and then sand it and fit it. But for this model, it pretty much just slides into place. So that's actually pretty good. Makes my build a lot easier. So I think for the next step, what I'm going to do is probably cut in about maybe 1 millimeter around the perimeter, just so that I can expose a little bit more of the wood, so that on the underside of the wheel well cover, I'm going to rough it up and sand it so that the glue has more surface to, or better surface to adhere to, not more. But so we're going to get rid of a lot of these like shiny areas right here, because otherwise the glue just won't bond properly. And then we're just going to put glue, or I'm going to use high sol on this one, and high sol around the perimeter of it, and then that should hold this in place, and it shouldn't move around. So yeah, I'm going to definitely do a 1 millimeter around the perimeter of this entire wheel well, take the covering off. That way it just bonds to the wood and not the covering. So we'll do that next, and then after that, install the retracts into this wing. Alright guys, so quick update on the wing assembly. So I haven't glued the wheel well covers yet, because I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to route the wires to the wing. Now from the factory, they have the threads right here on the towards the trailing edge of the wing behind the wheel well cover. I just don't feel like there's enough room for the amount of wires that's going to be coming out through the channel that they have on this side. So I'm thinking more so of moving the wires towards the leading edge of the wing, have it come out to the leading edge, and then back towards the fuselage, because the goal or the plan is to use the AR 5-to-1 connector to make assembly at the field a lot quicker, so you can pretty much connect up to 5 leads to this harness, and it's just a one-click harness adapter on the end. So if I use the original routing that the factory had set up for this jet, I would have to cram all these wires in this corner. It just looks a little messy. But there's a lot more room on the leading edge side of the wing, so I could either possibly route the wires to come out from this opening of the former, or I could do it right on the leading edge and just make it easier. So I think that's what I'm going to do, is do my wires and servo lead connection first before I finalize where the retracts are going to go, or gluing the wheel well covers. So I think I'm going to route it forward and then out towards more on the leading edge of the wing. So I think that's the route that I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and get started with creating all the servo extensions that I'm going to need for this wing. Alright guys, so now that the high sol has fully cured overnight for the gear door covers or the wheel well, we're going to move on to the installation of the retracts. So here is the main retract for the Viper. It's a pretty beefy landing gear, honestly, even the retract system. What we're going to do first is configure the wirings. Actually, let's have to assemble all the wire leads for it that came with the kit. And what we're going to do is extend all the landing gears so that we can work on the main gear. The reason for that is because there's several of these parts that needs to go to the landing gear strut that will hold the landing gear covers in place. So for that, we're going to have to extend the landing gears up, remove the struts from the retracts, and then install these hardware that'll hold the retract doors. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with beginning with soldering the power leads to the XT30, and then set it up to a spare receiver that I have so that I can command the retracts to extend, and then work on the assembly of the gear doors, then finalize the landing gear into the wing. Alright guys, so I went ahead and soldered the XT30 connector to the power lead. For the testing purposes, I'll be just using a 2-cell LiPo supplying 7.4 volts to the Retract controller. Now the manual does say that the Retract controller can handle anywhere between 7.4 to 8.4 volts, so we're just powering it up with a 2-cell LiPo. Now, a cool feature of the Retract controller that I've seen in previous builds, such as the Pilot RC jets, they do have a test function to deploy and extend your retract, and so for retracting it. So we do need to extend the landing gear so that I can install the mounting brackets for the retract doors. So you just simply push the button that says handle, and the retracts will extend. This helps out quite a bit with setup and breakdown of the field. So whenever you're done flying for the day and you have your retract controller powered up, you don't even have to have your transmitter and receiver powered on. As long as you have power supplied to the retract controller, you just push the button again, and it will retract the landing gears. There you go. Alright guys, so here is the mechanism that holds the landing gear door covers. According to the manual, we have the outer piece here that basically screws on to the outside of the landing gear, and then this is where the strut is supposed to slide in place, and it's supposed to face in about this way. So the issue we're having here right now is that on the manual, you've got an M3x10 bolt, which is what we have installed here for the outer plate, and then on the inner plate is an M3x8. Now the issue right now is that on the manual there's a hole drilled there so that we can bolt it in place, but this piece does not have a hole pre-drilled to it. So what we're going to have to do is basically line it up. We may have to do a little bit of modification, drill a hole so that we can actually attach the bolt in place, and then slide the landing gear struts through here, and then this is going to be on the outer part of the landing gear, and it'll look something like that once we're done. I don't know if you guys can see it. There it is. So I'm going to go ahead and pre-drill some holes on this plastic former and install it into the strut and see how it turns out. Alright, so here's a little quick update. So because we are missing those holes that is drilled onto this plastic piece for the strut, I went ahead and drilled out an M3 hole. I'm not sure if you guys can see it right there. So I've already installed the other one on the opposite end. So basically all I'm going to need to do now is take our M3x8 bolt and screw this in place, and I'll show you guys how it looks. Alright guys, so this is something that I just kind of noticed during the assembly, and I am going to point out that I am not at all affiliated with Blackhorse model or anything like that. This is solely the build for one of our club members, but something that I have discovered. So this is the main left landing gear, and this is the right main landing gear. So what I did notice was that when I was initially setting up the left side, notice how the grub screw is located on the side of the trunnion, and then you also have a stainless steel bolt that holds the clamping system from the trunnion, so it prevents the main gears from rotating. Now when I went ahead and got started with the right side of the main gear, notice how there's no grub screw on the side. Instead, they are on the outside of the face of the trunnion, and then also not a stainless steel bolt for the clamping system on the trunnion. And another thing that I did notice was that when I removed try to remove the bolt, or loosen the bolt to remove the strut, the bolt on these clamping system on the trunnion was already cross-threaded, and that was straight out of the box. So that kind of sucks, because then now we would have to either replace the trunnion, or I don't know. I don't even know if it's worth rethreading the trunnion here, because the size of this bolt is basically flushed into the trunnion. So right now it's not rotating. It's in there pretty snugly. So I think it looks like it'll hold. But eventually we're gonna have to replace this trunnion. So we might have to go and reach out to the manufacturer with replacing that. So again, I'm not at all affiliated with the manufacturer or the distributor, so I'm giving you guys the most honest and unbiased opinion of this model, and any issues that I run into, I'm not going to cover that up. So this is kind of one of those things. I think we definitely will have to have a replacement trunnion for one of the main gears, but for now we're just going to keep moving on with the build process. Alright, so now that we got the retract mounted and then the wires routed to the 5-to-1 connector, next step is to take the M5x35 bolt, an M5 washer, and we're going to take one of the main wheels and then pretty much mount it into the strut. So you're just going to screw the bolt axle to the strut. Try not to make it too tight. Alright, to about, still plenty of play. We'll screw it a little bit more. That feels pretty good. Still spins freely. So now that you have the distance pretty much set, we're just going to tighten the set screw, and that should lock the axle in place. Try not to open too tight yet. Make sure that it's not coming out. Cool, so now the main wheels are installed. Let's cycle the landing gears to make sure it is operating properly. I'm just gonna go and plug in the landing gear, which is this lead. Set this up real quick. Just cycle it. Alright. So the gears are in place, and then I'm just going to make a final adjustment to the nose gear door before we install it, and that looks pretty good right there. Yeah, so the next step is literally now is just to install the gear doors to this wing. Alright, so we're gonna bounce around just a little bit from the manual, and that's only because we're working on the retracts. So now that we have the main landing gears installed, I want to work on putting the nose gear retract on this jet. So before we install the retracts, we're gonna install the wheel cover to the nose. So we're gonna have to flip this jet over and then test fit this cover, and then we'll see where we need to go from there. So I'll see you guys in a little bit. So now that we got the jet flipped over, we're gonna test fit the nose wheel cover. So basically just kind of slides in place like so. And one thing to take note of is that the nose steering is a pull-pull system, so we're going to need to cut out where the hole is going to be located to the side of the wheel well cover, so that the stainless steel wire needs to route out to the nose steering on the strut. So take the cover off, you can kind of see that there's a cutout right there. There's actually a tube for the cables to come out from. So we're going to need to measure where that's going to be distance-wise on the wheel cover, so we know where we need to cut an opening. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then we're gonna sand underneath here in this corner, basically where it bends over, so that when I apply the glue, it has a better surface to adhere to, and it doesn't just come off because we didn't have a good bond. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then show you guys in the end how it looks. All right, so now we got the retracts all installed. We're just gonna go ahead and cycle it. Angled it a little bit. Can't see the. There we go. That looks a lot better. All right, so we're gonna put the gears back up. All right, so that actually worked out really well. The retracts are cycling properly, so we can move on to the next step, which is getting the nav lights on this jet pretty much finalized, and then show you guys how that looks.